Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of AgogeTV. I'm your host Phil Leonard. Joining me shortly is my co-host Josh Summersgill, and our guest on today's podcast is weightlifting coach and Juggernaut training systems coach Zack Telander. Zack covers his journey all the way from becoming a online coach, from being a regular coach at a CrossFit gym to becoming an online coach and building a YouTube channel that's super successful. He gets into all kinds of fun stuff. He's super passionate about weightlifting and performance training in general. He's a really good listen, so I hope you enjoy, guys. Obviously, as always, check out our sponsor, X Endurance, xendurance.eu's website. You can get 20% off using the code AgogeTV. Check out their products on the website in the link and description below. Hope you enjoy the podcast, guys. Hi everyone, welcome back to AgogeTV. On today's show, we have Josh Summersgill, my co-host, and we also have Zack Telander. Zack, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm living the dream, or living a nightmare. It depends on your perspective, you know.
I think I'm walking that line at the moment between living the dream and a nightmare. So
yeah, that's why perspective matters. You know,
exactly. For sure. So Zack, just basically tell us a bit more about yourself, buddy. What do you do in the wonderful fitness industry, and how did you get into it?
Currently, I'm weightlifting coaching weightlifting all the time. I do all of it now remote. Sometimes I would do it in the gym, but given the current circumstances, that's not really happening. I also compete in weightlifting. But that journey started a long time ago. It started in 2013. I read an article after I'd graduated from college. I read an article on CrossFit. So I Google searched CrossFit gyms near me, and then I dropped into a gym, and I kind of got hooked. I found that I was really good at coaching random people in class. So I decided to try to get my level 1 and start coaching CrossFit. And then at that point, when you start diving further into CrossFit, you can start getting into other skills, and weightlifting was one of them for me. So cool. About a year later, I did my first competition. I think 2014, I did my first weightlifting meet. And then a few months after that, I actually got hired as a full-time CrossFit coach, which is a crazy job in Chicago to be paid a salary to coach CrossFit. It was just ridiculous. Then I decided I wanted to go back into collegiate strength and conditioning. I played lacrosse in college, and that's where once I graduated from college, it was like, okay, now your athletic and strength career must be over. And for me, it was like, I didn't think so. So that's why I wanted to get into CrossFit in the first place, was to really see what I could do.
Yes.
And so when I went back into strength and conditioning, it was strictly because I was just tired of the everyday grind of being a CrossFit coach and having people that weren't really concerned with performance.
Yeah.
At least as much as I was. They were just, they wanted to be healthy, and they wanted to be healthy and they wanted to look good, which are totally admirable qualities,
Yeah.
But I found that as a coach, I was just a one step further than that. And it doesn't fit within any business model, especially in the city where I was in Chicago.
Yeah.
I was working with a lot of white collar workers, so people who would work 9 to 5s, but they were stockbrokers and in finance and stuff like that. So I got into strength and conditioning, and then I all of a sudden randomly started making YouTube videos. But I had an editing background. So my YouTube videos kept doing pretty well, and they kept doing better and better and better. And, here I am 3 years later with 100,000 YouTube subscribers, tons of views. And I do weightlifting coaching full time now. So it's been a crazy journey. It's been a 7-year journey to where I'm at right now. But it's always been where I want to be. Like it's always been joyful, at least. I haven't, there have been certain times in the strength and conditioning field where I've woken up and been like, I don't really know if I want to do this. But for the most part, I've been happy with where I'm at, because I got friends in finance. I have friends who are making a lot more money than I am, but they're not happy. And, I'm turning 30 soon, and that's kind of the point, at least, where, making big life moves doesn't come as easy beyond 30. And I'm glad that I made that sort of a life move early on, as opposed to maybe questioning where I'm at later. So
for sure, like obviously a couple of things that I want to unpack in that, but like I completely agree. Like I started the gym and opened up. So we started the gym and I was like 24, 25 at the time. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, and it seemed like like I say, it's much easier to make those decisions before you've got a house and a car and all the other things that are really that get you tied down and and obviously I'm fortunate enough to have all those things now, but like you say, it's tough to make that decision a lot later on.
I think it's interesting as well, Zach, the fact that you had was it a background in editing? Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I went to school for film and television studies. That's right, okay. I wanted to be like a director or something in film or TV production.
Yeah. So like I originally come across you like a long time ago over YouTube, and obviously started watching your videos, and I was like, I love this. Do you know what I mean? And like they were just, and you'll agree, there's a lot of shite out there. Do you know what I mean? And yours filtered through it and wasn't, and it was the stuff that you were saying as well as the way it was put together as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's quite cool how like what you were doing, like what will probably be many moons ago, now goes hand in hand with obviously the weightlifting, which is obviously cool.
And I found that like public speaking and speaking in front of groups helped a lot, and that was what allowed me to be a CrossFit coach in the first place. Yeah. Like just being able to speak on your feet, like if something happens, you can address it and you can talk about it. It's kind of an underrated aspect of what coaches do, and what, and so for me, when I talked in front of a camera or wanted to explain my ideas, it came naturally. It's always something that I'm working on, but that was always something that I've been good at. Even when I was younger, I could kind of perform well. I would get a little bit nervous, but I've always been interested in either competition or, I was in band, which is like our version of just like orchestra,
Yeah.
I loved performing. Like I just loved being in front of a crowd. I know that seems somewhat narcissistic, but it's just something I enjoyed. Like I think it's fun to entertain, and if people can get down with it, man, it's all the better.
Especially if you like I say, you're helping people with what you're doing now, and that's like if you can be entertaining and like fun to watch, and as well as giving somebody something useful for them to take away, like they're bound to learn more than just if you just say if somebody tries to present something to you and it's very deadpan and uninteresting,
very very dry,
hard to listen to. So
I've always based my channel off of my own experience, and so it's bringing anecdotes to the table. You can never really be dry because it's not scientific. It's not, it's purely your experience, which if you're not taking your own experience with a grain of salt, then you're doing something wrong. Because your experience is just never going to match up to other people. You can help people by using your experiences, but you still have to package it in a way that's not serious or not absolute. And that's always what I've always tried to do.
Awesome. And that definitely make you more relatable as well, for sure. I wanted to ask as well, you said about growing your YouTube channel, and obviously that's something we're working on now as part of the podcast. It's not anything we'd ever been concerned about before, to be honest with you. Did that sort of happen organically just by you going, right, I'm going to put some quality content out on a regular basis? Or was there a plan to it?
Well, I started at the time because I'd made this shift away from trying to be a collegiate strength and conditioning coach, and I got back into CrossFit. I got really strong. I got a lot stronger when I was doing strength and conditioning because I was part of this apprenticeship. And part of that was that we had to, as our curriculum, we had to partake in a program that would be written for an athletic team. So 4 days a week. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you were training, and then Wednesday you were in the classroom. And I got a lot stronger over the course of like 16 weeks doing that. I didn't really weightlift at all. So then when I decided, like, you know, I'm going to try to get fit again. I had to basically pick up a job at a Gold's Gym to pay the bills. But I want to get fit again. So I started doing like CrossFit and focusing on fitness. And then when I did YouTube, I was kind of just trying to document my experience doing CrossFit. And it was just really not good. Like, there wasn't any narrative to it. You know, I was thinking if I stayed with that path where I would be now, and I'm not really sure if it would have picked up, because I started that like 3 years ago. But I remember sharing it on Reddit, and someone was just like, you know, there's not much to this. There's, you know, you're not like a model, you know, you're not particularly like good because you're not like a games athlete, and you don't really have like any story or anything like that, like, or what you're trying to accomplish.
Did you request this feedback?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Someone just go in on you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the internet, man. Like, we can get into that all the time. I mean, I love that conversation, talking about the armchair warriors who expect more of you than they expect of themselves. But that basically, one thing that person said was like, well, what are you really good at? And I was like, well, compared to most people who are either weightlifters or CrossFitters or whatever, I'm really good at coaching the lifts. Like, I can like assess them and coach them a lot, or really well, amongst beginners, advanced, or, you know, elite, if possible, weightlifters. And the reason being is because, like, when I had that full-time CrossFit job, I was coaching, you know, 5 classes a day, which you guys are owners. That's really like the only people that can afford to do. I mean, that ends up being the owners a lot of times, the people who take on like 5 classes in a day, which is ridiculous, right? Like, you should only have like 2, 3, maybe 4 classes a day, and you pay the coach, you know, 20 pounds probably, right? Or something like that for you guys, right around 15. Okay.
More like it.
15. Okay.
You'd be getting our coaches' hopes up here.
Yeah, well, no, that equals $20. $20 an hour is kind of the rate. But I believe that CrossFit coaches are worth a lot more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the way that it's set up, you can't really pay them that. So when I did this, when I coached all these classes, and then we had to do on-ramp classes where we would bring new people on once a week. I would bring new people on and I would teach them how to snatch, clean, and jerk. And that was like 10 people, maybe, you know. We had a decent amount of turnover being in the city of Chicago, or just people wouldn't show up and they would just let their billing cycle die or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but we would have a lot of on-ramps, like, you know, every week or every other week I would have to teach a group. And I knew the curriculum so well that I could literally be, you know, folding towels if I wanted to. I could be typing something and I could teach people the entire curriculum. I could word for word, front to back, no problem. A week's worth of curriculum, because I'd done it so many times in a row. I mean, I was at this place for a year and a half doing exactly that. And what I learned was how to get a lot of beginners, I knew exactly what the faults were going to be in the snatch on every given progression. Like I knew it because I'd seen it like hundreds of times. It was purely like my practical skill that I was learning. And I didn't really know that that's what I was doing at the time. But when I started the YouTube channel, is like I had all of that experience bottled up. And so when I started to talk about things with a lot of nuance and a lot of different ways, it also helped that I was training really hard through all of this. So I was taking the perspective of someone who was at the time, you know, snatching around like 125, and the perspective of someone who has to continually teach people how to properly pick up a barbell, you know, and I was packaging that in a way that people hadn't seen before. That was it. So it was like, my first video was, you know, things that people were some common mistakes in the snatch or something. And I was talking about something that no one, like literally no one on the internet has been talking about.
Right.
And it was just simply the fact that the way that we get the bar off the floor, the first, second, third pull, all the stuff up to the hips is not as important as learning how to snatch in its entirety, which means being able to drop really hard and pull yourself underneath the bar, stay connected to the bar after you make contact. And what I basically pointed out was that so many people teach the snatch one way that it doesn't allow for progression into, you know, it doesn't allow for the athlete to get more advanced. It's just very bare bones, which I guess is fine. But when the idea behind CrossFit is like what the definition of fitness, right? It was God, I can't even think of it. Broad time, increased work capacity over broad time, and modal domains, right? That's essentially saying getting better scores. Like, hey, what's the definition of fitness? Get better scores. Because then we can point out, like, you know, they love saying quality or it's quantifiable, right? It's measurable, quantifiable. This is the verbiage that like Greg Glassman, Lord Voldemort fucking came up with, right? This is the verbiage that he came up with. And all it means is just increase your performance. It's like, I come from a performance background. You don't need to teach me these shit. This is like, right? This is what we do, right? So when we teach these things to people, our goal to get them fitter is to get them better at snatching. You can't deny that. And the issue that I was having was like, either people don't want to get better or people aren't looking for ways to get better. And that was where I broke off, and I wanted to go into something more in depth. And that's really it. I made one of those videos. I got really great feedback. I love telling this story. I used to get emails every time I got a YouTube subscriber. And I remember I got like 15 emails that day. And I was like, holy shit, I got 15 subscribers. I went from like 5 to 20. And then I kept posting, and then I would get like, you know, 100, and I hit 100.
We just hit 100.
Yeah, we just hit
3 months. We nearly wet ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't know how, like, I don't know what happened with those emails. I guess I turned it off or something, or just at some point it's just ridiculous to think about getting, if you got 1,000 emails in a week from just people being like Joe Schmo subscribe, like that's just ridiculous. But for me, it was cool. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do this no matter what. This is just what I'm going to do. It's going to be like going to the grocery store, you know, come up with an idea, write it down, film it, put it on YouTube. It's going to be every week, no matter what. And every single week for 3 years, I've done it.
Nice. I like it.
Cool. It's the same thing. Like you went to your first day in CrossFit. You're like, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. I'm just going to keep showing up. I like it. It sounds like it was somewhat intentional, but also organic, a bit of right place at the right time as well. Do you know what I mean? You had a different message to what everybody else seemed to be talking about, and I think that's pretty cool.
And the fact that you do it just because you're doing it, you're like,
yeah.
I mean, that's obviously how you get better and things develop, don't you? It's like, I'm not going to do this to necessarily make money. I'm going to do it because I enjoy doing it, regardless of what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I actually had the potential to make money for a long time. I was just too lazy to actually monetize.
Right.
I just didn't care. I didn't care. Like, it was like I didn't set up my AdSense account for like a month or two when I could have made, $40 a month or whatever, 40, $50 at the time, which would have gone a long way. But for me, it was like, I don't care. I just don't care. I want to just, do it for the people. It was like, it was fun.
Awesome. I love it. It's a really cool story, and I can definitely appreciate it coming from where we're at the minute. Like I say, we're just sort of pumping out content at the minute and having a great time with it. And if a couple of people enjoy our podcasts and little videos that we put out every now and then that's all good by us, because we're having a good time doing it. And again, hopefully one day we can go, oh yeah, I remember when we wasn't bothered about that. Like, this could be cool. Our next question that I wanted to ask you is obviously, and this has come from Josh specifically as well. You're not a conventional build for a weightlifter, should we say? So if you look at Josh,
just to sort of like, so I'm not going to stand up now. But I'm 5'6", and my femurs are this long.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually have.
Tiny.
This is nice because it really depends on how you train and certain things, like certain factors. One thing I will say is, like, when I started CrossFit, I've always been an athletic person, like always been able to take on coaching cues and like adapt and change like immediately. I'm one of the lucky people that was able to get double unders on the first day of trying them. I got like a muscle up first couple of weeks of
so you're that guy.
Training.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then one day I was like, I legitimately did not know how to pick a barbell up from the floor. Like, I didn't get it. And I was 22 years old, or 22. I legitimately didn't know like how to even structure my body to pick it up off the floor. And so when I learned how to snatch and deadlift and clean, I just hated it because it just didn't work for me. Like, I just didn't get it. And I remember being like, you know what? I'm going to drop underneath the bar every single snatch rep today. I don't care. I just don't care. Like, everyone seems to have this problem where they're power snatching more than they snatch. It's like, well, at what level can you snatch? Yeah. Find that and stay with it for 1,000 reps, 10,000 reps, 100,000 reps. I don't give a shit. This is the movement. This is how it works. Go do it. And so in my mind, I was like, I walked in the gym that day and I was like, I'm going to catch snatches low. And what did I do? I just started catching snatches low. Immediately my snatch shot up like you wouldn't believe. Like, it was just within the week, 20-pound PR. The next week, another 10-pound PR. The next week, until I got to the point where, I got right around 100 kilos. And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, your technique really does suck. Like, let's get better at weightlifting. And I would argue that my technique didn't really get good until I snatched like 130. Right. And then even then, it still wasn't that great. But the main thing being like that, determining that you're just going to do something no matter what, like, that was so valuable to me. Yeah. And that kind of formulated so much more. But as far as like height and me not fitting into it, I was always like, at least in the gym, the CrossFit gym, I was always like pretty good at weightlifting. And it was always to people like, wow, that dude's like built like a string bean and he's good at weightlifting. That's so weird. And I always kind of used that as my big motivator.
Yeah, definitely.
And so like there were, short, stocky, strong guys, and I was snatching right next to him, and I was clean and jerking right next to him. And it always motivated me. It's like Jack White from the White Stripes. He would purposefully play shitty guitars because it added an extra challenge to him. It was like, he's doing that on that guitar? Like, that's crazy, and that it just added that sort of extra oomph to it.
Yeah.
So for me, I've always come from that point of just being like, fuck it. I don't care. It doesn't matter what I look like or anything. Like, it just, am I lifting it or not? Like, none of that matters if I'm not fit for the sport. Like, God knows I'm not fit for this sport, but I'm still able to get better right now, and I'm still able to do it. So I do it. Secondly, like, I believe that there are certain advantages and disadvantages for each proportion, no matter what. No. So short femurs, if you play into your strengths, you will not be a good weightlifter. Longer femurs, if you play into your strengths, you're not going to be a good weightlifter. Yeah. If you play into your strengths at all, you're likely not going to be a weightlifter, not just because you're disregarding your weaknesses, but because you're mentally weak. So there's so much of this sport is like, there's this little bit that is, it is so important, and it's completely unseen. And it's the pressure. It's the feeling of pressure when you are on a heavy barbell that I've seen now so many times. You cannot perceive how someone will perform under pressure in any Instagram video, in any comfortable lift. Like, you could see a guy power clean and push jerk 140 kilos like a toy, like it's a snack, right? And you're like, okay, this guy is really talented. This guy is really good. And both of those things might be true, but he might not be a winner. He might not be able to convert. Yeah. And I've seen it so many times. I've seen guys who absolutely blast weights, and then you put on like a little 2 kilo on there, and then their mind goes somewhere else because the pressure. That is so much more important than any sort of structure that you could ever have. Ever. I'm only saying this because I've been involved in this sport for a longer period of time now, and then I'm actually dealing with minute amount of kilos. Like, we're talking the difference between, metal placement, at least in America for super heavy, is 350 kilos total, or 360 kilos total, or 355 kilos total. And to see the mindset of someone who does really well in the gym in a complex and then flops when the time comes, and do that repeatedly over and over again, that to me is what I am concerned with. I don't care what your build is. It's the person who can game. It's the person who can under pressure. Nice. Longer lifters. Like, if you look at Lasha, if Lasha was, let's say Lasha was slightly less muscular in his legs and less muscular in his arms, he would look like Gru from what's that? Goddamn. Yes. Right. It's like literally a circle with sticks coming out of it. Right. Yeah. Because his legs are so long and his arms are so long, and his femurs, right? We all talk about femurs. They're also long, but at the end of the day, it's performance metrics that matter. Yeah. And all you have to do is adjust depending on certain other metrics. So for a guy like Lasha, right, he can probably pull upwards of let's just say 400 plus kilos. Like, I'm confident if he did any sort of heavy pulling, he could do 400 kilos. He would never do it. He should never do it ever. If he wanted to back squat really heavy, he could get near the 4s as well. I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah. But if you do those things in your Lasha Talhadze, you are going to have a lot more recovery costs than someone like Lu Xiaojun, who is shorter, who has to move the bar less far. So Lasha, his advantages anatomically would be pulling, right? Yeah. Also, the bar, when he makes contact, is higher. Literally, it's a higher position. Having longer leverages allows for more of a whip, more of an explosion at the top of the lift. It makes it much easier in pulls and just extending in general. If you want to take that away, train Lasha like you would train someone who is. So Lasha's right around 2 meters. I don't know if you guys go by feet, right?
Yeah.
We're a bit backwards.
He's 6'6". If he was going to train like someone who is 5'6", you're taking all of his strengths away. Not because they could both do the exact same protocol, but if he did less volume, which he should, less overall intensity, which he also should, then you're going to be fine. It doesn't matter what your limb size is. But if you train the same, then he's going to struggle. So the idea that weightlifting is a one size fits all, it's not. You have to fit the weightlifting that you program and that is for your protocol. You have to fit that to the athlete. So for myself, I know this is a long explanation, right?
Cool.
But
keep going. It's good.
Yeah, actually, fine. I want to go and train now.
For myself, it's like, okay, Josh, what do you snatch? What's your snatch?
Not enough.
Well, just
116.
116. Okay. So my best snatch, let's say my best snatch was 116. Okay. If we both did 80%, you would do less work than me. Not only would it be perceived with exertion, right? So you would be able to perceive less work at 80% than I would. I would physically be doing more work. Work equals time divided by distance. Distance divided by time, or time divided by distance, right? I'm moving the bar farther, right? And hopefully at the same speed. But what we found out with bar tracking is that the peak velocity that I need to complete a snatch at 80% of my best is higher than the peak velocity you will need to complete a lift at 80% of your best. So even though the relative load is the exact same for me and it's the exact same for you, and the perception of that load may even be the same, I will have to move the bar faster and I will have to perform more work. So if you and I share a bar together and we train the exact same, weightlifting will be in your hands. You will always have the advantage over myself. So what do we have to figure out? We have to figure out exactly how much more velocity, how much more power I need to move the bar than you do. And I actually trained with someone who was right around 5'6", 5'7", and I found that at 85% of his best load and 85% of my best load, I was moving the bar almost 33% with 33% more power or total output. So I would have to do 66% of the total volume of lifts that he would do in order to have the same stimulus. Now, I also have a heavier snatch than he does. So I would have to take even that into consideration, right? So maybe I would do 60% or 50% of the total volume at the exact same relative load as someone who is your height. In that sense, it doesn't matter what your femur length is. It doesn't matter what any of those things are because you're training the right way. And those, you don't have to always have that metric. You don't always have to have a bar velocity tracker. You basically have to treat weightlifting like it's a sport, and you don't have to bury yourself. If I'm good in the pull and my snatches look snappy, why would I push myself to make them look like shit? So it always has to play into your strengths in the sense, like if you're an explosive guy, why do we want to make you not explosive? They would see people who could jump really high and are very explosive, but their squats aren't very high. So what are they going to do? They're just going to bury them with volume, make them move slower. It's like heavier, longer squat sets. It's like, no, that's not always the answer. No. Yes, your squat has to go up, but who's to say that your squat won't go up with proper programming, right? Yeah. So that was an interesting discovery on my part. And basically it was like, you know, program for your weaknesses, but also know how to play into your strengths. And there is no anatomical disadvantage.
Yeah. Fucking love that.
Yeah, I love it. You know, like, go on, sorry. I once spoke to a coach, and I was like, we were chatting about stuff, and he's a clever dude, and he turns around to me, and I'm like, does it not make a difference that obviously like my femurs are considerably longer than Josh's? And he was like, don't tell me that. And I'm like, well, it matters surely. Like you've just told me about lever length, and like you just taught me about it. And he's like, yeah, don't say that, because there's somebody out there that's lifting more than you with the same length femurs as yours, so don't use that as an excuse. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's certainly possible, right? Like, yeah. Lasha's 6'6" and he snatched 220, but you know, I think I'm not. Again, it's like, take someone like Michael Jordan. If Michael Jordan made the idiotic decision to pursue weightlifting, right? He doesn't have the proper build to be a weightlifter, everyone would say. Yeah. But he does have a 40-inch vertical, and he is the most athletic and mentally strong human being to pretty much have ever existed on this goddamn planet. Yeah. If you're telling me that he doesn't have what it takes to be an elite weightlifter, probably not the best ever, then I'm gonna patently disagree with you, because it's not the way that you come out of the womb that determines your athletic prowess. It's every other factor. Yeah. Like, that just makes sense to me, right? Like, progression doesn't occur because of the way that someone was born. Yeah. And I talked about this on my podcast with Max. Like, what even is good genetics? Like, what really do people mean? And no one can give me a legitimate answer. Is it like your brain's ability to like fire a muscle and hopefully you have more of a certain type of fiber muscle? Great. That's fine. That's great. So I'd say you have good genetics to jump really high, but do you have good genetics to like go on a stage on a third attempt, a clean and jerk for a gold medal? You're 1 kilo heavier than, if you miss this, you don't even medal at all. And it's the total for the Olympic medal, and your country is relying on you, and you have 4 years of training under your belt. Do those good genetics, does that just get you that? Like, no, it's your brain. There's some sort of thing that's just like Michael Jordan. I mean, yeah, he's got good genetics, but what does that mean? Like, no one can point me to what that means. Like, okay, he can jump high, he can run really fast. I'm sure there are people out there that if you tested their verticals or something like that, like maybe they would have better results than he did. Yeah. But again, if you put them in a room and you say to the two of them, compete in jumping high, Michael Jordan's going to win for some reason.
Yeah. I love it.
Why the fuck does that happen? It's not because of genetics, like we said. So, you know, this is the shit that like gets me fired up, because like there is no really understanding this. It's just making sure that you're dialed in. Like you're complying with the program that will work for you, and B, you're learning how to mentally be better, to mentally improve, to, you know, it's hard to explain. I think the best way to understand it is like, the more that you do it, the higher the likelihood of you being more mentally sound. Yeah. It's almost like you can practice certain mental exercises, which are likely going to help. But if you have been doing it since you were a child, it's likely that you're going to be more mentally stable than someone who's just been doing it for a year.
Yeah. Agreed. I've got to ask as well, and you probably not because it's about endurance, but there's a book that I've just grabbed to show you. It's called How Bad Do You Want It? By what's his name, Matt Fitzgerald. And it's basically, the book is about perceived effort within sports, and like a lot of the things that you've just talked about. Then it basically you've just done the weightlifting version of this book. Like,
right? Yeah. I've never Is it a good read?
It's good. It's actually highly recommend it. Like,
okay.
Me and Josh both really enjoyed it. It was actually on our question list because there's a chapter in the book called Workarounds, and obviously they actually use the example of elite level rowers who are like Josh's height, and they're like,
and let's be honest, I fucking hate rowing.
yeah.
I'm tiny, I'm too small, I should not be sat on a rower ever. And this book is ruining my life now.
Yeah, the book's basically told him that he just doesn't want it bad enough. Like, it's because there is elite rowers out there who, and what they do is basically they just about keep up for the majority of the race, but then at the end of the race in rowing, they can up their stroke rate to something that somebody who's taller can't. So they play to they find a workaround that works better for them.
Yeah. It's basically like it's a programming alteration or it's a goal alteration.
Yeah.
Like the likelihood that someone like me makes it to the elite level is much less because the way that the sport is perceived is different than who I am. And so you're not providing that workaround and you're not doing it long enough. Like what kind of coach is going to provide a workaround so that a 5'6" guy can be better in crew? Like, unless, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
This is like, and I don't know. For me, it's like I've always been weightlifting in a black room. I've always just been weightlifting by myself, like and with no other factors. I literally don't give a fuck what anyone else lifts. I just don't. And I never have.
Yeah.
Never once. And everyone says, well, what weight do you want to lift? It's like, I don't give a shit. Like, as long as I can just have an idea of getting better, like, that's all I'm going to pursue.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, there's really nothing else. I never once, I was like, never cared what an elite weightlift, like he snatched his 200. Oh, I guess I'm just a piece of shit. Like, never once. I don't care. Cool. It's not me. This is my pursuit. So why would I give a shit about what anyone else does? I mean, it's the most individual. And I think what happened for me was like, it came from only being in team sports my entire life. I was never in an individual sport. The last individual sport I was in was swimming. And I got really good at that. And then I quit at like 13 years old, right when it started to get intense. And then it was team sports only. So it was never about me. It was never about the individual. And what I started to do was be like, oh, well, if it's not about me, then I don't have to put in extra work, right? The team training is going to come to me. So that was like my big fallacy of team sports, was that I didn't take it upon myself to get better because that was the team's job and that was the coach's job. And that was the biggest fallacy I ever had. And I had some struggles with team sports, especially in college. Like, my career didn't go the way I wanted it to. It didn't end the way I wanted to, which I'm sure for a lot of people who are listening or who have been in rugby or anything like that, and it just didn't quite go. You might have gotten to a high level, but maybe you didn't make the first side or whatever. Like, it just didn't go the way you wanted it to. And then when you got to an individual endeavor like CrossFit or weightlifting or triathlons or even fighting, like, it was such a breath of fresh air to just not give a shit about anything but your own performance. Not even care that anyone was better than you, just knowing that you could be better and that you should pursue that with like no other worries. Like, for me, it was like, I cannot wait to get to the gym so I can get better. Like, that's every single day I was like counting down the minutes. I'd be at work just watching like CrossFit videos on YouTube and,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love it. And again, like, I think just your general attitude towards training, coaching, like, just awesome so far. And I do want to ask as well, just see if we can give our listeners a take home. Obviously, the majority of our listeners being CrossFitters. If you was to provide them with some advice for weightlifting, have you got any go-to tips that you use?
Stop blaming genetics.
Yeah, stop blaming.
Get after it.
Try harder.
Usually, like, it's basically not giving yourself a break. There are certain things that are, I wouldn't say non-negotiables in weightlifting, but there are certain things that, like, you probably know you aren't doing, and you need to do them. So here's the main thing. The completion of the rep does not matter. And coming from a place like CrossFit where you're racing to complete the rep, that is one of the most difficult things to get over. So the completion of the rep doesn't make any difference at all. And the amount of weight then would also not make a difference, because what are you really trying to accomplish? Are you trying to get better, or are you trying to complete the thing and lift the weight? So I'll explain that even further. Like, a snatch is one movement from the floor to overhead with locked out elbows. Now, you can do that with 60 kilos, 70 kilos, 80 kilos, 90 kilos, 100 kilos, and it can look horrible, but it would pass in a competition and it would be a legitimately completed rep. So you can't just look at the way that you lift as, I'm going to complete a snatch. It's like, no, I am going to be a proper weightlifter today. I am going to be an exceptional weightlifter. And so for me, it's like the first thing that I learn is, like, there's really no weightlifting that can impress me unless it's exceptional. And then at that point, I'll care about the weight on the bar. So what are the specific points of performance? So someone listening, the exact things that I could tell you is, it's likely that your deep squat and your overhead position or front rack in said deep squat is not where it should be. Yeah. It's highly likely that it's not where it should be if you're a newer weightlifter. So the best way to work on that is to develop almost endurance in those positions. And it's painstaking. It's actually literally it's painful. Like, your body's pain receptors will notice this. But as long as you're not moving through those positions when you're not prepared, that's all injury is just not being prepared for the work that you're going to give it. But there are ways to adapt so that you can be prepared. So something like sitting in a deep squat, the advanced form of this would be widening the feet and sitting in a deep squat. And an advanced form of that is widening of the feet, pointing the toes forward, and sitting in a very, very deep squat. You're going to feel a ton of pressure in the knees, and it's going to be tough. But you don't see gymnasts relaxing when they're stretching, because they're trying to push the limits of their body, and they're adding external load to do so. So when you sit in a deep squat, there is external load because you're not sitting on your ass. The weight of your body is pushing you into those positions. Just accruing that time alone is valuable. And I don't think people really understand that. They think of the snatch as like the back squat. You know, the back squat, the load comes from a high point, and you're unracking it and you're standing in a fully stacked position. And then you go down and squat. The thing happens itself, right? If you just let gravity do it, what it's supposed to do, like, you're going to end up squatting. But the overhead position and the deep squat position, and to properly do that, is not natural at all. And it takes building up of these, or almost like the detonating of these pain receptors, and building up of this endurance in those positions to go further. Yeah. So the overhead position and the front rack position in the deep squat are usually big errors. Outside of that, I would say, I would say that it's likely that you aren't organizing yourself over the top of the bar in the later stages of the pull. So you might be getting your shoulders back too early. That's probably the biggest issue. You know, people pull from the floor, and if the goal is to hit the bar off their hips, their shoulders are just going to get right behind the bar, and they're going to hit the bar off their hips. The problem with that is I want everyone, if you're listening or whatever, to stand with a slight hinge and try to raise your elbows. It's a lot easier than if you stand and you lean back and try to raise your elbows on a vertical plane as well. Especially if you put a weight in your hand. I've got a yogurt right here, right? If I'm leaning forward, it's easier to go here. If I'm leaning back, it's a lot harder to go like that. Yeah. Right? That's just physics. You're creating, you're lessening the moment arm. So the idea that being close to the bar, being over the bar, jumping vertically will allow you to manipulate the bar better. That's something that's likely not happening. That was literally the first video I ever made, was about that exact thing.
Awesome.
But I think for the most part, focus on that. Like, it almost feels like you're doing gymnastics, you know? When I warm up, it feels like I'm preparing myself for gymnastics. I feel this like ridiculous pressure in my knees. And I think like if I move in this position in any wrong way, like I'm going to shear my ACL off, you know, it's not pleasant, but that is the difference maker for sure. For sure.
I love it. Excellent. Zach, I think that, like I say, just to wrap that little bit up again, that like, I think first thing, probably go and check out Zach's YouTube for more. But again, it's just people not wanting to do the unpleasant things that make them better. And again, you can get stuck into that.
Everybody wants to snatch and clean.
Yeah.
It looks fancy on Instagram.
I think they're unaware of like that though. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
It's not, I can't just teach you a progression and have you just do it. It's like there's that, the unpleasant shit. It's just like takes so long to develop.
The buy-in to know that unpleasant shit will pay dividends as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
much.
It's
only once you've done it for a bit, you're like, oh my fucking God, I'm getting better now.
I mean, here's the real thing. Like everyone who can't snatch more than they power snatch does not have that great overhead squat that they think they have. So let that one sink in. Okay. If you're power snatching more than you snatch, your bottom position is not as good as you think it is. End of story. So what are you going to do to make that position better?
Yeah.
You know? And then obviously it's the tempo and all the other stuff as well.
Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Like I say, I want to be respectful of your time as well. So we've just got a couple more questions for you, and like
sure, let's fire them off.
We'll call them quick fire questions, but always, as always, first one. And again, we like to read books. So if you got a book, and if not a book, a film recommendation for that you think everybody should read or watch.
The Scientific Principles of Training of Strength Training by Chad Wesley Smith. I'm obviously on Team Juggernaut. You know, that may come with a bit of a bias, but I've read a lot of strength training and a lot of principles of strength training books, all the way, you know, dating back like 50 years. And this one is the best compilation of exactly what you need to know about the scientific understanding of strength training, and the different principles that are incredibly valuable to understand. That book for sure is like one of the only ones that you will ever need to understand like principles, like pillars, like something like that.
Yeah. Love it.
Films. Does it have to be weightlifting related or
no? You could like
Captain America if you want.
Yeah. I mean, I saw this year. I really liked 1917 and Parasite.
1917 is good.
Yeah, and I really liked both of those. I was, you know, amazed with both of them. But Yeah, man. I'm a bit of a movie buff. I went to film school, so it's like asking me for my favorite, if I had kids, my favorite child, so.
Do you just watch films though and just go, shit, I don't like that, I don't like that? Is that just like ruined films for you now?
I've become a lot less critical and a lot less snobby, actually. But like, I'll openly know if someone's just not being respectful of like any sort of craft at all with a film. Like, there are certain aspects of certain films that are just so shitty that you can't even believe that they got away with it. And ways that films could be so much better, I believe. But for the most part, like, I'm not too much of a snob. Like, I like, shitty action movies every once in a while and things like that. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, next question is, if you could have a go at any other profession or any other sport,
easy.
Go for it. What would it be?
Surfing. Easy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Love that sport.
I'd love to be able to surf. It's just
do you know about the sport at all? Like, it's a great sport.
No, I'm not. Complete ignorance.
It's cool. It's like, okay, they have a time frame. It's usually one-on-one. Sometimes it's like a group of 3 or 4, but like when it's one-on-one in a finals, it's so cool. It's a lot of it's luck, because the type of wave that you get determines the score that you'll get. So it's basically like you get as many runs as you can, and then they just take the top 2, and then your score has to beat the other guy's score or whatever to make it onto the other one. And what I found with surfing is, like, when something, like, there's certain it's what I love about surfing is like, how much did you control your body? How much did you control what you did on the wave? Were you slipping around? Like, were you able to slow your momentum down so that you could get barreled, which is just like literally letting the wave come on top of you. And if you are too slow, the wave comes on top of you too much and it crashes on you. So that, like, aspect of controlling what you do through space, that someone's going to win or lose. It's now an Olympic sport, surfing is.
Right.
And it's like, there's a lot of money in it now. And like, I find it to be incredibly exciting. Outside of that, I'm a beach guy. Like, I always have been. Like, I love the beach and I love the water. So that's an easy answer for me. No question.
I like
it. Yeah. Also, it's like, it's always luck. But Kelly Slater and Shane Dorian, certain guys, like, they always win.
Yeah.
That's, again, if Michael Jordan was a surfer, he would find a way to win. It's just, you know what I mean? So there's that aspect of, like, champion mentality. And it's at the top, it is super intense, just like every sport,
There's always those people, like the Frasers, the Fronins,
exactly.
the Jordans, like people that you know of in a sport, but you don't know the sport. Then that's probably because it's for a very good reason.
Yes.
And again, example being Michael Jordan. I've probably never watched a basketball game in my life, but I know exactly who Michael Jordan.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, I feel like you'll have. This is the very last question of the day, and I feel like you'll have a good answer for it. What is your biggest? What is what is the thing that really gets on your nerves? What's the biggest dick gym move that somebody does? So you're in the gym, and it can be like, I don't know, dropping empty barbells is something that obviously gets to me. Chalking up for press ups. What do you see people doing? You're like, such a dick.
I get more angry with comments. I get more angry with comments and the way people speak, because that I'm really concerned with that, like myself. And I find that that's what makes someone able to produce good content, is to be considerate about their speech.
Yeah.
So for me, like, okay, let's say I post a PR power clean. Someone says, wow, that's a lot. That's more than I did the other day. Or I have to work on mine, like, because you're catching up to me, right? Do you understand? Like, hey, asshole, I posted that on my Instagram. I don't give a fuck. I'm sorry. Did I ask you how close my power clean was to you? Like, I don't care, like, that's the sort of shit and that person is only commenting on yours They could be like a good friend. They're only doing it just because they feel a little bit of pressure or some reason to say, hey, you know, I'm still better than you. Like shit like that. Like that to me is something that I hate. And one other thing is like, hey, you know, I just got into this sport or I got into the sport about a year ago. I'm doing pretty well. I'm at 120 kilos snatch, 150 kilos clean and jerk. My goals are to snatch 160 and clean and jerk 220. And I'm like, oh, so you're the one who wants to snatch 160. I've been looking for the person who wants to snatch an American record. You know, no one else would like to snatch 160, right? It's like when you tell someone about your goals to snatch an American record or a world record, like you're an idiot. It simply just doesn't make any sense. It's like that's like me saying my goal, I want to have $100 million. Like, oh, you do? That's so honorable of you to have. It's like some people think that having super lofty goals is a very honorable endeavor, right? When really it's just a stupid, not well thought out, unnuanced endeavor completely. Those are easily my two biggest pet peeves.
I love it. And it actually reminds me, I always remember listening to an interview with Liu Xiaojun. I obviously wasn't listening, I was reading it.
You can read Chinese. That's impressive.
But like he basically, they were asking about what his goals are and stuff like that. And he was like, I'm not competing. He basically said, I'm not competing with anybody. I'm competing against world records.
Yeah, I've seen that interview. I was
like, yes.
Well, but see, it's like
he's already there though.
Yeah. And his actions are speaking for everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, what sort of actionable thing is it to say like, hey, you know, I want to be a world record holder, or like, I get the whole lofty goals thing, but I also at the same point, like, I don't get it at all. Like you want to be paid to be a weightlifter. Why don't you fucking focus on getting to nationals first?
Yeah.
You dick. Like, are we all at the service of your shoot for the stars goal? Or like, what are you going to do in between that time? Like that endless time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I use Liu Xiaojun as an example because he already had the world record. Like,
like he was doing it, right? So there's no such thing as goals. It's just like, I'm doing it. I'm just going to do. Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. Zack, that was fantastic, buddy. I just want to ask before we let you go, where do people find you? How do people get in touch with you if they want to know more about you?
YouTube. Just go and search my name, Zack.
Yeah.
Telander, Telander. On Instagram, it's coach underscore. Is it underscore or under dash? Underscore. Yeah. Coach underscore ZT. And then also Patreon, if you want to get some programming, patreon.com/Zack Telander. And then also, I'm trying to get this film going. I'm trying to get this weightlifting film made. It's a feature film about weightlifting, and we would really appreciate a very small pledge to our Kickstarter. We have a Kickstarter trying to, essentially with this Kickstarter, it's like we're building up a fraction of the total cost of the movie to show the people at Hollywood that people want to be involved. And we are now, like literally an hour ago, we just allowed people to become producers on it. So if you give a big enough donation, you can become a producer, which is also a big thing because that means you literally have stock in the movie.
Right.
Amazing. Yeah. So,
and you'd be on IMDb, which is what it's all about.
Yeah. You get an IMDb credit.
Yeah,
for sure. If you want to be if you want to be a producer or whatever, you can get IMDb credit. Awesome. But we're really trying to push this thing hard. More info for that is on my YouTube channel. And then also you can follow The Weight feature film on Instagram. That's it.
Cool. Awesome. We'll do our best to link all that up in the show notes as well so that it's easy for people to find. Again, Zack, thank you very much for joining us today. We definitely ran over time, but we was having a good time, so never mind. Thanks for joining us. And everyone listening, thank you very much for listening. Please, if you enjoyed this podcast, take the time to like, subscribe, and share on whatever platform you're on, iTunes, YouTube, whatever that might
Definitely YouTube. We're trying. Definitely YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. Please like and subscribe and share as usual. Again, guys, thank you very much. And peace.